Nimala. Welcome everyone who's out there in a colder place, I think, than I'm in right now. We're not experiencing the coldest part of our Novembers and Decembers. So welcome. Let's have a warm time this evening talking about friends. And I was delighted to have this invitation because it made me think about the many friendships I've had in my life and the qualities that those friendships brought to me. And because several of them had to do with creating new things, brought newness to my friends and newness to organizations and communities we were working in. I thought about one friend who, just to give you a little insight into some of these friends, who one of our approaches to building our friendship was if one person asked a question, that person had to be willing to share their response to it after they had listened to what I had to say. So we always shared on the same topics. We never had one person say something and then move off to another topic. So that was fun, and it has built a very strong relationship. I have another friend who's just 10 years old now, and I've always seemed to have young people in my life, and I get to play with her. I get down on the floor, and that is good fun to enjoy playing with somebody. I have another friend I thought of who I reconnected with recently. And we have a common history of our university days. And so there are things that we start talking about that no one else would be interested in. I have another friend. I was thinking about distance and location, and she's in Zambia, and physically, we see each other once every 5 years or so. But we have this amazing ability once we're on WhatsApp together, the conversation moves into the areas that we're both interested in. I have a lot of respect for what she's able to do where she is and how we can work together on things. I invite her here to work with me on projects. You might be hearing a theme of creativity. Another friend I have, we offer programs at the university here, and they're always the joy of designing those 3-week diploma programs because they're full of creativity, different topics about learning organizations, etc. But it's just a joy to be designing and then delivering programs with this friend. Also, I have over the last, I'll say 20 years, been developing my relationship with God. And I find that that being is a pretty good listener. And so in times when I'm getting ready for something or thinking through issues, I have a listening body there. And I have these friends behind me, these plants. They're a big part of my friendship group, and they get to be the focus when other friends come. I just had 2 friends visiting, and they love to talk about the plants. I talk to the plants talk to me, but lots of people talk about them. So there's all of this variety in how I want to explore friendship with you, having thought about it since I got the invitation. So I'll use a PowerPoint to build some points that I think are important to consider in friendship, especially friendships where we were developing the joy together. And I'll do about, I think there's 3, maybe 4 small bits of information that I'll provide. And then I'll ask a question, and I have my handy golden timer for 2 minutes and allow you to do some reflection and how you would answer that question. And it will help build our profiles of worthy of friendship characteristics in us. So I will bring up my PowerPoint now. And Here we go. And I'm going to do one more adjustment here before I start. Wait. Yeah, building friendships of joy. They should bring smiles to our faces. I loved this picture. So let's see how we do in thinking about building friendships. I chose both the idea of friends and friendship because I think we can have friends, but friendship is a state of being with another. So friendship, it's a gift of a connection. And to think about it as a gift is pretty important, I think. With another being, you'll see that I'm not using person. I'm thinking about more than people. It might be pets, it might be plants. So a gift of a connection with another being with whom you have a close bond and mutual regard. So that sense of there's a reciprocity, a coming and going of energy back and forth, and we allow the other into our space. It's a relationship with another you know well. I think it's important to realize we might have some budding friendships, but typically a friendship of joy will have a lasting effect, and there will be regard with liking, affection, loyalty, and it would be intimate. There would be things that we would say or do with that person that allows us to know ourselves better or them to know themselves better. And it's a state of mutual trust and support between two entities. A friendship can exist between people and their pets, with people in organizations, between organizations, between nations. And we're seeing where that can fall apart. So it's very important to understand this mutuality and reciprocity that's important in friendship. So that's kind of an overview of what I think is important to understand about friendships. Now, for the reality, you might not be expecting this. So there are only 2 lifelong friendships that you will have in this life. Interesting statement, huh? But I thought about it a lot, and I want to share with you that all other friends and friendships are optional, except these 2 that I'm going to go into in a little bit more detail, and then explore the 3rd, where friendships are always optional. So, also in tonight's session, I'm going to be, as I mentioned, asking you questions and giving you 2 minutes to think about it. And typically the question will center around virtues. And I wanted to just quickly give you an idea of some virtues that we could hold inside our backpack for friendship. And just have a quick look at those so that as I begin to explain some things about friendship and you look for in yourself some of these virtues, these may be some that come up for you. And I hope it's clear to people, but we see things like self-respect in a friendship. Self-respect is good. Respect for others, anticipatory joy, as we're talking about tonight, accepting, tenderness, confidence, cooperation, kinship. That's why I think plants and animals are a part of this scene of friendship. Curiosity, reciprocity, supportiveness, mindfulness, generosity, courage, creativity, confidence. So those are some. They might click with you already, but it'll help you with the questions that we're going to explore. So here we go. The first friendship that you will have of the 2 that are permanent in your life is with the self. A friendship with yourself. And to make this one work, this first category of friendships, you have to recognize who you really are. So I'll just say that any friendships that are based on roles we play will have a narrower bandwidth than ones that are true to who you are as a soul. So the inner you, the one who you are getting to know, and we get to know that one who we are throughout our lives, and situations bring up new information for us, but we need to recognize who we are inside, and that can be very different than the roles we play outside. The virtues you possess, what are the virtues in you that seem to come out easily, that demonstrate and provide an energy, a vibration that others, certain others, vibrate to and want to be with you. And you must be consistent in your regard for yourself. So the ups and downs of self-doubt and being hard on ourselves do not help us build our friendship with ourselves. And it's a mirror to any relationship we're going to have, to know ourselves, what we're bringing, who we are, and what we're bringing to the relationship that can grow into something close, intimate, joyful. So, in your friendship with yourself, here's the question. This is your 2-minute. What's one virtue or quality you're happy with? And once you've chosen one for yourself, I want you to thank yourself. So do some thinking about what's one virtue or quality you're very happy with. I'll be quiet while you're thinking, and let this 2-minute timer, and at any time, give yourself a hug for that quality or virtue, a kind of a wrap yourself around. Thank you, Golden Timer. So all of you could have written many, many more. The assignment was just for one, but make sure you give that hug to yourself. Okay, the second non-optional friendship you're going to have in your life, whether you know it or not, is a friendship with the divine. You could call it a higher power. There are many names that you could give this, but an entity outside of this world as we know it. And so I'm not defining what that might be for you, but it's a really important part of developing friendships to know there is someone, something outside of the world as we know it. And to make this friendship work, we must recognize the eternal, and that for me means unchanging nature of this being and the role played by this one in the world. That it's a creative role, that it is a relationship with this one that for me is about discovery. It's about learning. It's about finding out what's really going on in me and outside me. It's really important to remember this one, especially in difficult situations. And having a practice like meditation maintains an ongoing connection. And being able to accept the love that comes from this source. These are very important, different qualities than the relationship with yourself. So I'm going to give you another assignment for 2 minutes, and it's the same kind of thing. In your friendship with the divine, and you might not have one, so you can think about what would it be. What's one quality or virtue you let shine in this friendship? So if you have one, think about what one shines. If you don't have one, what would you want for a being that's not stuck in this reality, but actually has a higher view of what's going on? I'll let you have almost 2 minutes for thinking about that one. And for this one, you gave a hug to yourself for the virtue. For this one, I'd like you to have one hand up as yourself, the other with the divine, and to do a namaste for this quality in the friendship that you have or could have, where you honor the quality, the virtue that you share, that shines when you're in connection with this one. So those are the two that I consider friendships for your lifetime. Let's move on to the optional part of the evening, friendships with other souls, entities. And to make these ones work, again, like we do with ourselves, we need to recognize their unique virtues and qualities. They're not like us. Often people think that we can have friendships because we're so much alike. It's not true. It's really important to recognize the uniqueness of the other, be it a human being, a pet, a cat, a dog, a horse. Many people have really good relationships, friendships with other beings. You must be able to be creative and celebrate good times with each other to boost happiness. And this is really important, especially in today's society, where some friendships have, through habit, gotten built up to be friendships of, I'll say, moaning together that things are bad, and they spend their time on those. And it's really important to be able to be creative and celebrate good times. And to communicate with love and regard, especially in difficult times. So if someone else is having a difficult time, who is a friend, a close bond, that we need to be able to listen with love, but we don't need to share and have that same experience. So that's a really important part of friendships where they're different. We're all different from each other, and it's important to allow the unique qualities of the other to shine through, and for you to always be, and the other to communicate with you with love and regard. So to make these ones work, I'd like you to think about one quality or virtue you're happy you consistently bring to any relationship, and we can say friendship, with others. What's one quality or virtue that you know you have that you can consistently bring to friendships with others? Almost forgot my timer. This one may be the same as some of you as you've chosen already, or it may be knowing the consistent quality, maybe a different one. Okay. Thinking about this friendship with all other beings, just put a big smile on your face right now and pat yourself on the back for consistently bringing that virtue or quality to connections, relationships that bloom into friendships. Because there are many things that can get in the way. Time can get in the way of friendships, geography, conflict can get in the way, death can get in the way, circumstances in people's lives can mean that you move apart either energetically or physically. And so that's why I say that besides yourself and the divine, all other relationships are optional. And so building friendships, we need to be aware that things can happen. They may not be lasting. So here are qualities that build joy in friendships. The nature of your communication. There needs to be communication. I'm not saying it's all words. The nonverbals are important as well, but fostering good listening and openness are very important to bringing joy to friendships. And I'm sure all of us have been there, if you feel like you're either the one doing all the talking or the other person never, ever stops to ask you, listen to you, it's troubled waters. Being creative, and I mentioned this before, knowing how to celebrate good times are really important in friendships of joy. And that creativity can spark so much joy. Being consistent, and the consistency helps to develop a sense of belonging and the connection that is always there. So, as I mentioned about my friend in Zambia, I can phone her up anytime and we can connect. The spaces in between don't seem to matter because there's a consistency in what it is we have interest in and what we talk about. Caring is another important quality for building joy in friendships. Encouraging support for each other in difficult situations, and there's no stress to be with that difficulty, that person, that's a friend, and so you can be with them in difficult times. And the last one on this shape is curiosity. Being able, excuse me, to find out more, both of you, about things that interest either one of you. So you're always curious about what each other is involved in and willing to explore further and deeper, even though that may not be something in your life. It is in this other person's, and however you met, through family, friends, serendipity, whatever, this area of curiosity becomes very important. And if there are boundaries that get created where you don't feel you can ask something, or they ask things that are, well, you don't really want to be answering that, it's a sense that that curiosity has gone too far. And it's a very interesting part of developing a good relationship, to be curious about the things you're both interested in and know how deep you can go. So those are the qualities that can bring joy. And I was thinking about, I have another friend who, a young friend who comes for Friday afternoon baking together, and we really have fun with that. So I made a little recipe for adding joy, J-O-Y, to friendships. So the 3 qualities that will bring joy. Interesting, the first one, you need 1/4 cup of justice. Interesting, eh? Justice. But that's the good discernment. Being interested in doing the right things right with each other and in society, in the circles that you're part of. So 1/4 cup of J, justice. You need 1/2 cup of openness to the original you, so that you're willing to be open about who you are. I won't say so much about your opinions and your beliefs, but more the qualities that you hold, the ones that we've been looking at already, and being open about expressing creativity and thoughtfulness, and not so much the opinions that are kind of rampant in our society. So, and the last is 1/4 cup of yielding nature. And I think this is a very interesting why, the yielding nature, because we do have to adapt and flow with what's going on in each other's life, in circumstances that we might get in, and seeing mistakes as part of a learning process and carrying on. when we think our friends all have to be right or do the same thing as we want to do, there's no yield in that. And that often prevents us from benefiting from each other's company and time together. So having a quarter cup of yielding in times when the other person might need it or when you want it becomes a very important ingredient, which would then equal a sweet recipe for friendship. So some joy in our lives through justice, openness, and a yielding nature. So to come to this point in the conversation with you, I asked you 3 questions, one about your own virtue that you bring. That would be A. The virtue that shines through when you're with the divine, that would be B. And C would be the consistent virtue that you bring to all friendships. So I'd like you, if you have a piece of paper, to jot down those 3 in a Venn diagram in relation to each other so we can have a further little bit of analysis, I'll say, of what brings joy to you in friendships. So if you could create a Venn diagram with 3 circles overlapping, and in the A one, put the virtue you chose for your friendship with yourself. As you might realize, I put creative in there for myself. What would be yours? And then your relationship or a relationship you might have could grow with the divine. And I put loving in there, and I'd like you to put in what you put for B with the divine. And C, your relationship, friendships with others. We're going to focus on the center in a minute, but right now I'm going to ask you, and I'll give you the 2 minutes again, to think about that overlap between yourself and the divine. So I had loving and creative. What would be the nature of that relationship? What would be, when you bring those 2 things together, what would it give you? So I'd like you to think about that and fill in each of the overlaps. So A and B, you and the divine. So I had creative and loving, so I put fun in there. So I'd like you to do that. And then A with C, yourself with others. What were the 2 virtues and what's the overlap? And then others and the divine, which is often the situation out there that's bigger than your friendship. And there are things going on. So if you could take the time right now to identify what's the condition or quality that is being experienced in the overlap of each of the different friendships that you could have. And the last thing I'll invite you to do with that Venn diagram, that star in the center, is the joy that you bring to relationships. And when you put the three overlaps together, what is it that is the binding quality that brings joy to your friendships? The relationships you have with others that turn into friendships. What is that? It's an indicator for you of why friendships work. I put love in there when I looked at the overlaps being fun and regard and always being there. Love became the quality. So what would be the quality that's central for you that brings joy to your friendships? And again, this is all unique and individual to each of us. So I'll let you finish that. And oops. Well, I didn't want to go there right yet, but it seems like we may be here. I wanted to leave you with your Venn diagram and then to offer this poem as a bit of a meditation for us. So if you want to sit back and be comfortable and take a deep breath, and I will read it as a meditation for all of us. May you be blessed with good friends. May you learn to be a good friend to yourself. May you be able to journey to that place in your soul where there is great love, warmth, feeling, and forgiveness. May this change you. May it transfigure that which is negative, distant, or cold in you. May you be brought in to the real passion, kinship, and affinity of belonging. May you treasure your friends. May you be good to them, and may you be there for them. May they bring you all the blessings, challenges, truth, and light that you need for your journey. May you never be isolated. May you always be in the gentle nest of belonging with your anima cara. And that is a Celtic word for soul friend. And that's a poem by John Donahue. So thank you for this lovely opportunity. I enjoyed bringing my own experiences and ideas together, and that people were present here this evening for the Manchester Center. So go into friendships with joy, and I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. It's a lot of information in there, but a lot to think about, I felt. A lot of the virtues we kind of take for granted, but when you really deeply think about it, it's like, do I actually have them? Because somebody says, oh, what's good? Sometimes you have to really think about it, and you can't come up with any virtues because maybe you're thinking too deeply about it and you don't instantly recognize it. And then other times you can rattle off a whole lot that are quite superficial, maybe at times. So no, that was really wonderful. I just wanted to, we haven't had any questions yet, but I just thought if anybody does have any questions, please do put them in the chat and we can put them, I can put them out. So
And what you just mentioned, I think, is really important, that we understand giving each other some feedback on qualities we see become very important part of our growing of the friendship.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true, because sometimes we're not able to see it within ourselves. And it's always nice, I think. Makes you feel better as well when somebody actually recognizes it and puts it there. And I think, like for me personally, if somebody does say something, I do feel good at that time, but then I do think about it and try and develop it a bit more. So that is a good way to kind of grow within yourself as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And just for you to know, your clarity and conciseness is really good for this kind of format. It sets a nice stage for what needs to happen when you only have an hour to present. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we do have a question that's just come in. How do you overcome misunderstanding in friendships? That's a good question. I think that can happen quite often, can't it?
One of the things I would say is the assumption that we can understand everything that's going on in someone else probably leads us down a road that will take us to misunderstandings. So the first point I made about the friendships with others is recognizing their unique qualities and the curiosity to find out how they develop those, what's going on, what that's about. That would be different information than we hold. And so what's important to them might not be important to us, but we can still have a relationship and it may grow into a friendship. And if we like difference, if we like the possibility of learning something new, different because of the differences, we can go down a path that may have a lack of understanding in particular circumstances. But to term it a misunderstanding, I often think opinions are where we get stuck on misunderstandings. We can be in a situation and one person reacts one way and another person reacts another, and we think that there's something wrong with the way the other person reacted, when in fact, us having an assumption that we all should consider it that way or that way leads to that. And so checking ourselves is really important, I think, in first preventing misunderstandings by always being curious, being willing to ask questions, willing to listen to responses that are different than we would give. I think that's a really important part of breaking out of misunderstandings. And when there's conflict, I sometimes think it's a bigger thing than what might be presenting itself in the conversation or the situation. For those of us who believe in past births and understand trauma, that there are many things that could be coming up in a person that can look like a misunderstanding, but they're just, I'm not, or they are not ready at that time to engage in that conversation. So I think some compassion and caring for ourselves and the other in these situations with misunderstandings. I've done a lot of work in conflict resolution, and I think there are some wonderful methodologies out there, but none of them, especially if I'm in the business setting, allow us to think about this could come from somewhere totally different than this current presenting situation. So I think having some compassion for ourselves, knowing what we know, that first one about ourselves, know who you really are, I think is important. And that we have a lot of history that we don't know about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. But just following on from what you said, I've had another question. I could not write any virtue stroke quality when thinking of the relationship with myself. although I had virtues for relationships with the divine and other beings, how should I explore and expand my relationship with myself as a female?
Beautiful question.
Mm.
I think explore is a wonderful word. And when we think about exploring, I think we think about it as an adventure, an unknown territory. And so when we explore ourselves, I think it's valuable to, whether it's using a mirror or putting an object out there like a plant and saying, how is this plant like me? How am I like this plant? How am I like this flower? How am I like this puppy dog that I find so much joy in? And each of those, you could say it's using a metaphor or analogy, helps us discover things in ourselves. So a walk in nature is a really good place to sort out, how am I like that birch tree that's standing in front of me? How am I like that big rock that's right there and solid, you know? And I might say I'm not like that in any way, but that's a way to explore, and you can find it by looking at other people. But I find when I start comparing, and that's not a healthy thing.
Mm.
When I start looking at other people for, do I have that virtue or not? So it's a gentler way to work on ourselves, to try and find metaphors in other living beings, be they, and you'll notice, I don't know how much people know about indigenous beliefs, but in indigenous beliefs, there's always an animal that becomes your particular identification of strengths, and that can be a really good beginning place to think about, how am I like uh, uh, a peacock? How am I like a bear? You know, these are things that if we play with them, and I think being playful helps to identify virtues within the self. So have fun with it, and don't treat it as doing self-analysis, but more, I can understand the world better if I understand myself better, and looking for the virtues that could be there,
Yeah.
but also trying to find a representation of it elsewhere can be helpful.
Yeah. Thank
Oh,
you. I think also just on that, like for me, my experience was just having a bit of self-compassion and self-respect, because I think sometimes we're too frightened to look within ourselves
mhm.
because we might not like what we see. But, just and that was my experience when I initially came into the meditation that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think knowing that that's compassion for self is an amazing virtue that
Mm.
you discover when you first start to look and have that lack of judging the self, but explore as the person who asked the question. It's a really good word to think about it. I'm in exploration. I may find things that I don't like. I don't have to stay on those. I can look for, oh, the fact that I'm doing this means I have some love, compassion for this self. And yeah, and so many of us have so many beautiful virtues that are gifts we have not explored. I was in a group of newcomers here in our small town the other night and did a little activity. And there were two women, like they were all ages, young to old, and there were two women in their 70s. After we had finished the little activity, they said, I have never in my life thought about what my strengths, my gifts are, my talents. And I think we should. I think we need to. And so I encourage anyone out there that's thinking about what are my virtues to spend some time with the backpack. I think Neelima is going to the PowerPoints available. So just looking at those and thinking about metaphors, and that those can be helpful, not the answer, but can be helpful.
Thank you. So I've got another question. I can see you have put friendship with others as optional. So is that meant it is not necessary to have friendship with other beings?
No, the idea that optional is in comparison to eternal. So I will always have this relationship with myself. So that's the hug. I will always have a relationship with God, whether I recognize it or not. So that's the namaste. And then the optional means all of those other relationships can come and go because of time, geography, death, other circumstances. So they may not always be there for you, but those two, yourself and the divine, will always be there. And so cultivating those, I have found, helps free me up in my relationships with all of those others to know I can be with these people. And if they create joy in my life, I will probably hang in with them. If they don't, I will try and be in relation, in connection, but I might not take that extra step of always being there for that person.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps a little bit
Yeah.
in understanding. Optional is about, it's when we're developing friendships, I think understanding if they're not healthy, if they're not helping us, if we're not able to be of support to the other, then there are many other people in the world or other beings that might be of more consistent support.
Yeah.
So being realistic about I'm not the only one or they're not the only one.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you for that explanation. So we've got another question from one of our regular viewers. What's the best approach to take when you have a friend who won't stop talking about her issues and problems? I don't want to be rude to her, but not sure what words to use to convey how I feel. I listen carefully, but end up with a headache. Brilliant talk. Many thanks. Never thought so deeply about friendships.
Mm-hmm. The talkative friend.
We all have one, I think.
We all have one. And we all sometimes might be one.
Yeah, that's true.
And I guess one of the things in our listening, because I think we do have to honor and regard our friend and listen, but we may not listen. We may listen with heart rather than with intellect. Like to keep trying to figure out what can I say, what can I do, how can we, that probably overwhelms us. But just to sit quietly with love for that person and to not feel like you have to say something. And when they say, don't you have anything to say? I've just poured my heart out to you, that you can feel love for that person. Like, I really feel for what you're involved in, but to know your own boundaries and know that that's not your situation, that's theirs, that you may consider each other friends. So being a good listener, communicating with nonverbal as well as heart, like speaking from the heart and keeping it short, could be a model to the other person.
Mm.
So there's no one answer for that one for sure. Each person that we're in connection with who does, I find several of my friends who live alone, this is a particular thing that happens. Finally, somebody who I can talk to who will listen to me, and I'm listening and going, oh dear, this one may never end, right? But it's healthy to be there for me, to hear, to listen. And at a certain point, I don't interrupt typically. They become quiet, looking for me to say something, and I don't rush in. I don't say something right away. Take a deep breath and say, really? Wow, there's a lot going on in your life right now. And sometimes I will say, let's take a minute and just be quiet with each other, see what happens. And the see what happens is often to see if they can break out of that. And if not, it might be that the next time I make a date with that person, that I'm saying I'm available at noon and I have a 1:30 that I have to go to. So I have some limits in how long I spend, so.
Yeah.
Being thoughtful for your own health, but also knowing that you may be the only one that they got to talk to that day. And in this time of isolation and loneliness for a lot of people coming out of the pandemic years, I think that there are a lot of needy people out there who will just talk at us. Yeah.
Lovely. That view is just said. Very wise answer. Much appreciation. So just following on from this, I was just wondering for our viewers, do you have any online workshops planned on the topic of friendship? Because I think it's a big topic, and it's been really interesting. Obviously, we've only had an hour, so we've not been able to go further deeply into it or cover other things, but we were just, would you have any online workshops that we could maybe share with?
I'd just like to say you're the first group that's ever asked for a session on friendship. And I think that in some of the work we do, there's edges, whether it's a communication workshop or this or that, and we sometimes get into friendship, but it's never been the focus. And I think we are in a time and a space where people are thinking about this. There's more distance from some of our family members, our kin, and we're building other relationships, and it can be new territory, especially if it's outside job, especially if it's outside community. And somehow I think I have found there are connections with people that are soul connections,
Yeah.
that I'm somehow important to them and they're important to me. And so the friendship develops because we know there's something that will be resolved by just knowing each other, being each other's soul friend, like John Donahue said. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it might be time for something that might be a kind of 2-day where there's some time to think overnight or do some checking in with some people, and then bringing it to another place. So interesting.
Yeah,
We'll
thank
do
you.
some
That's
about
great.
it in
Look
a little.
forward to that.
Yeah, okay.
No, that'll be great. Thank you. So we don't have any more questions, and it's probably a good time to end. So before we go, I'd just like to share some of our upcoming events at the Manchester Inner Space.